Hi, everyone, and welcome to Monday of our virtual camp experience, Christian Family COVID Camp, as we're calling it. Again, our theme this week is what is normal anyway? And today, the prompting question is what has awoken in you? So I just wanted to spend a few minutes with you just to kind of start this conversation. When I was in third grade, I suddenly became aware of my gut. So began my struggle with insecurity and self-consciousness. Throughout elementary and middle school, I remember playing baseball, soccer, basketball. I was never really able to enjoy the game because I was too focused on that moment of dread when someone would say, "Let's play shirts and skins." It wasn't until high school that I began to realize that I could do something about this gut. And so I began to go to the gym, spend hours every week working out, lifting weights. Thing is, I hadn't yet realized or learned the distinction between aerobic and anaerobic workouts. So eventually, sophomore or junior year, I started trying to run. And there was a time when I woke up every day early, went for a mile run, and about a week in, I took a day off to kind of celebrate, congratulate myself on what I had accomplished. That skip day turned into another. Turns out I'm a bit of a perfectionist, kind of all or nothing when it comes to things like this. I was talking with Corky Kempf about my struggles with perfectionism as a parent, and he put it so brilliantly, just saying simply, yeah, I get it. 100 minus 1 is 0. Once I took those skip days, my efforts toward active life quickly eroded back to total sloth. Fast forward to adult life, and I've lost count of the number of times I've started a running routine only to abandon it a week or so later. Gut's still here. I guess this is my normal? I said a moment ago, talked about my struggles with perfectionism as a parent. This is something that Sylvia and I share. We both place incredibly high expectations on ourselves as parents, and therefore those expectations end up passing down to our kids. All three of our boys are amazing, and in some moments when we are able to step outside of ourselves and offer ourselves a little bit of gentleness, we're able to see just the gift that they are, and they are a gift of themselves, and we are able to see on top of that the ways in which we as parents have influenced that, and that's pretty cool. Problem is, most days we end up commiserating at the end of the day about all the tiny little ways we messed up, and we start to spiral, and we imagine how that tiny little misstep today is going to cascade into something tragic in their adult life. It's a constant fear that we're setting them up for failure despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. This experience is most acute with our middle child, Rowan. He's an empathic like you wouldn't believe, curious beyond all measure, fiercely determined and strong-willed in all of his efforts. And he's a bit of a perfectionist himself. As his parents, it's kind of crushing to watch him struggle with what he perceives as failure, especially when the view that I have, the angle that I have on that same effort is only showing or revealing his brilliance. This past year, he attended kindergarten, and he was assigned this amazing teacher. And through this classroom, through this teacher, through the classmates that he had, we started to see him really thrive. And it was really incredible to see. Even when his efforts fell short of perfection, he learned how to struggle through and to celebrate what he had done, to celebrate that progress. And that was a big step forward for him. And then distance learning happened. And his teacher remained a wonderful, patient, creative teacher, and he remained relatively engaged. But it wasn't quite enough, and we watched him regress. Is this our normal? I'm not so sure. See, back when we were only struggling through one extraordinary reality, COVID-19, I was already wrestling quite a bit on a personal level with the word normal, because I started to realize that, at least for me, normal referred to the patterns of comfort, of predictability, and of complacency. Patterns of only celebrating how far I've come and completely ignoring how far I have left to go. Of course, like I was saying with Rowan, it's necessary that we celebrate accomplishment, because that's going to offer us the fuel to keep going. But my normal patterns were keeping me in this place, right? I at all costs, I needed to keep that status quo. That's normal for Mike Krussel: complacency, comfort, predictability. And so if I go back to my example of exercise, if there's a day that I take off, I can explain it away by exaggerating. Man, I was walking pretty fast going up those steps today. I can probably skip. Or with empty promises. Tomorrow, I'll just double my workout tomorrow. Thing is, the path to growth is not present in comfort and complacency. And it seems that I'm not the only person struggling with words that we're using a lot these days, normal being one of them, another one being unprecedented. I got an email from a friend last week that really hit me. He said that he's using the word extraordinary to refer to our current reality rather than unprecedented. For one thing, he said, these times are not so unprecedented. Whew. That really sent me reeling. How tragically, how absolutely right he is. This isn't our first global pandemic. This isn't our first eruption of racial tension. So how do we still find ourselves utterly unprepared for these moments? Maybe it's not so different from the struggle I shared with my exercise. Maybe we tend to overemphasize how far we've come at the expense of how far we still have to go. Now, as a nation, I do think that we do have a lot to be proud of when we think about what is now possible through our modern healthcare system. And when we think about the progress, the movement from slavery through the Jim Crow era to our present reality, we can look at that and say, look how far we've come. Thing is, when we acknowledge there is still work to go, that doesn't take away the work that was done. It's just acknowledging there's still work to do. So back to my story, I finally found the activity that works for me. Around Christmas time, Sylvia, as a yoga instructor, certified yoga instructor, she introduced me to some very basic yoga moves. And so for 7 months, nearly every night, I've been practicing yoga, and I've accompanied that with just some simple walks a couple days a week. I celebrate this achievement because this is the most sustained activity that I've ever had in my life. Shame to admit, especially as I imagine some of the dedicated athletes that may be watching this who are so committed to their sport, their running, their biking, their swimming, etc. So I'm maybe a little bit embarrassed to admit that, but 7 months, that's a long time for me to keep going. So I celebrate that, and I recognize that I must look ahead to a lifelong commitment. Okay? I'm working through the all or nothing struggles. When I miss a day, because I do, it's not every day, I desire to do yoga or walk every day, but there are days that I don't. Instead of seeing that as failure, I'm choosing to reframe and see that as just a different step on the path. And so this is just me flipping the frame of what is normal. Instead of seeing the end, no more gut, the goal that I have, no more gut, that's the normal that I want. I'm choosing to focus on the means, living an active lifestyle, which that's pushing me past my bias of achieving comfort, a place of comfort, and instead bringing me into a place where I'm normalizing growth, which is what's going to happen through periods of being stretched and perhaps even uncomfortable for a bit, but that is the path to growth. And so I've chosen to approach the two extraordinary realities of our current moment, COVID-19 and the racial tension that we're experiencing, in a similar way. Of course, the ends in both of these matter deeply. We do want to find that vaccine. We want to find the methods and the ways in which we can treat this virus. We want to restore our economy in a way that doesn't cripple people, hurt people. We want to restore or build for the first time, perhaps, the universal dignity of all people, regardless of their skin color. Of course, individually, we may treat people that way, but it's kind of hard to deny that there are systems in place that unfairly benefit one group over another. And so for me, instead of focusing on those ends, again, I'm focusing on the means. In other words, I'm choosing to focus on the work that I can do in this and that I have left to do because it is my work. So that's an inward journey. And it's being provoked and led by the moral and social teachings of our church that are the foundational teachings of the inherent dignity of the human person. Right? That's something that can neither be earned nor taken away because it is inherent. It is core to who we are because we are made in the image and likeness of God, all people, right? And so recognizing that to be true, that leads me to a couple of questions. Questions like, why is it that I am afforded the opportunity to be effectively completely insulated from this pandemic? I'm able to work from home. We're able to leave our house very minimally, et cetera, while millions of others lose their jobs, experience food insecurity, or worst of all, die. Questions like, how is it possible that the stories being shared by people of color can be so drastically different than my own? I don't have answers to either of these questions, but I consider these to be crucial on the path to vulnerability and empathy, which can foster understanding, community, and ultimately belonging together, which is the reign of God, the thing to which we are striving. So this week's theme is, what is normal anyway? And the guiding question for today is, what has awoken in you? Kind of other questions, what routine is disrupted? It can reveal something that would, when routine is disrupted, it can reveal something that would otherwise lie dormant. What has been disrupted? What has been revealed? And those are questions that they'll be in the description section of this video, so you'll be able to reflect on those on your own. And without question, routine has been disrupted. So what has awoken in me as I've explored the questions I shared earlier? I don't want to be complacent. I don't want to put up blinders so that I can feel comfortable. I don't want to go back to the normals of the before time. As I think back over some of the most recent years of CFC, we've been exploring themes like paradox, like merciful like the Father, growing love, and the ever-expansive word hesed. Each of these themes has invited me, I can't speak for you, but for me, invited me to a space where I attempt to hold apparent opposites together in love. Right? A space of the both and, not the either or. And it's not an easy task, and yet, the way I see it, this is the mission that Jesus left for his church on the day of the Ascension, the Feast of the Ascension. So, a couple closing thoughts here. Father Richard Rohr said that if we don't transform our pain, we transmit it. As parents, Sylvia and I continue to work to transform our perfectionism into something new. We don't want to transmit these expectations on our children. There's too much pain wrapped up in those expectations. I would love to welcome a new normal in my life in which I am able to welcome the pain, suffering, and evils of the world, hold them, make space to hold them in my heart with love so that I can transform it in my own being. And then to act out of this center of love and toward the common good for all humanity. I recognize this is not easy, and so share one other person's thoughts. Howard Thurman, early 20th century black theologian who wrote something that has really applied in a profound way to the path that I've been walking these past few weeks and that I continue to go back to. He said that there are many experiences which we face that are completely overwhelming. As we see them, they are too terrible even to contemplate, and yet we must face them and deal with them directly. There can be no more significant personal resolution than this. I will face the problem I have been putting off because of too much fear, because of too many tears, or because of too much resentment, even if it means crying all the way through, in order that I may learn to deal with it without fears, tears, or resentment. And so this is the desire that is awoken in me, that I might face the experiences and realities that have to date been completely overwhelming for me. This is the new normal to which I deeply aspire. And I would love it if you were at my side in this journey, even if we see things differently than one another. Peace and happy conversations. Happy Monday.